Welcome back to Street Fighter on Sega, the series where I look back on every Street Fighter game to grace Sega hardware, in the order that it was released. In the last episode we covered Street Fighter Alpha, a superb fighting game that ushered in a new era for the franchise on Sega Saturn. While it was unfortunately held back by its tight development time and its position in between arcade hardware generations, its flaws would be addressed in its imminent sequel, now that we have finally moved on from Street Fighter 2. We have moved on, haven't we? Wrong! Between the two Alpha games on Sega Saturn, Capcom saw fit to release another movie game, this time based on Street Fighter 2's anime film. A forgotten game in the series that hasn't made its way into any subsequent Street Fighter collections. So what is Street Fighter 2 movie and how does it blend the interactive movie genre with Street Fighter 2 combat? Well, as Bison would say,
I'll explain it to you, boy.
So let's take a look at this oft forgotten and unique entry to the Street Fighter franchise. Everybody knows about the infamous Street Fighter live action movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Kylie Minogue. We even covered the game of the movie of the game on this channel, but the game of the animated movie of the game seems to be less talked about in gaming circles. Street Fighter 2 the animated movie, as we would come to know it in the West, was first announced by Capcom at the Street Fighter 2 Turbo tournament in Japan on the 19th of August 1993. Produced on a budget of just $6 million, the film endured its fair share of turmoil after Masashi Ikeda, the director behind various anime such as Gundam Operation Meteor, who was announced as the film's director, left the project early on, though he would later collaborate with Capcom again on the Darkstalkers anime.
Oh, what's the matter, pussycat?
In his place, Gisaburo Tsuji, the director behind countless anime as far back as the 60s Astro Boy series, jumped into the director's chair. He then split the studio into 3 teams and developed the Street Fighter 2 movie as 3 separate anime episodes, then stitched them all together for the final 100-minute movie in the space of just 6 months. The fight scenes in the movie were choreographed by K1 founder Kazuyoshi Ishii and the professional fighter Andy Hug. Released on the 6th of August 1994 in Japanese cinemas, less than a year after the announcement and just a few months before the live action movie would hit US cinemas, Street Fighter 2, as the film was known in Japan, would go on to be one of the 5 highest grossing movies in Japanese cinemas that year. The film would be localised as Street Fighter 2 the animated movie in the English speaking world with multiple dubs, one being a PG-13 version in the US which was significantly censored, and one alternate dub that was released in the UK and Australia and released as unrated in the US, which is a little bit spicier.
No way! He's my friend!
Bison, I'm gonna rip your lousy heart out, you filthy creep!
He's my friend!
Bison, I'll rip your f***ing heart out, you filthy b****.
The more adult cut also retains the infamous Chun-Li shower scene from the anime. The English dub is, by and large, excellent. It was one of my first introductions to anime, with a cast which, despite all sporting clear American accents for the characters, produced an energetic and dramatic performance. Legendary anime voice actor Tom Weiner's performance as M. Bison is my absolute favourite, but a special shout out has to go to a young Bryan Cranston as Fei Long. The English dub also features a grunge soundtrack from the likes of Silverchair, Korn and Alice in Chains. I'd love to share some of it, but if this video hasn't already flirted too closely with a copyright strike, that will probably send it to oblivion. Street Fighter 2 the animated movie is an absolute favourite film of mine. The soundtrack, the voice acting and the incredible anime fight scenes blew my mind as an 11-year-old kid, and it's a film that I still love to watch today. And it's not just me who enjoys the film, it's very well thought of in the Street Fighter community, and it would arguably be the key driving force behind the franchise going forward. We saw that Street Fighter Alpha adopted the anime's art style and even went as far as to replicate the Ryu and Ken battle with M. Bison in dramatic battle mode, which, in the arcade, featured music from the Japanese anime soundtrack. Capcom's plan to capitalise on the successful anime clearly went beyond adopting its aesthetic. And so, Street Fighter II the interactive movie was announced and showcased at 1995's E3 on May the 11th, with Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation and 3DO versions announced. Ultimately, its Western localization and the 3DO ports were cancelled for unknown reasons, though we can guess why, but it did eventually release on the PlayStation in December 95 and on the Sega Saturn in March in Japan the following year. Spread across 2 discs, this interactive movie experience is a little different from the norm. The default mode is effectively an interactive movie, with the actual interactivity, at least for the most part, fairly minimal, or so it would seem. Here, you play as the bad guys, specifically, you're one of M. Bison's monitor cyborgs, and your goal is to collect as much data on Street Fighters as possible. This is done via watching an abridged version of the movie. There's some story setting scenes that are still present, but they are cut down in favour of the additional scenes with Bison's hunchbacked scientist. At any point in any of the scenes, you can press the C button to give you a dossier on the 2 characters on the screen. I'm not sure on whether this contributes to the finale, but it's a nice feature nonetheless. And yes, I tried it on the scene in India, and the game does recognise that it is indeed Akuma, or Goki, selling oranges in the background. The more important gameplay comes during the fight scenes. Holding the A button, you call up a cursor to the screen which you can then move around. Pressing B records the subsequent actions on screen, or at least that's the description I have for the in-narrative and gameplay function. Hold A and hit B as an attack begins and you'll hear a chime to confirm that you've tagged it successfully. The reason why I say it records subsequent actions is that if you hit the buttons just as an attack hits, it won't register, so you have to preempt them for the best chance. And if you have memorised these fight scenes from multiple watches of the movie, just as I have, you'll stand the best chance to predict when an attack is coming. If you've not seen the anime before, you'll have to brush up on it or play the game over and over to learn the attack patterns. Even then, the application isn't entirely consistent. Some missed attacks count, some don't. Charging a Hadouken counts, but a missed punch does not. If you hit the B button and no attack is recorded, then the number of remaining attempts goes down. The number of attempts range from 8 to 30, depending on the scene, and if you use them all, you'll find yourself unable to record any more. Why does this matter? Well, in your role as a monitor cyborg, you'll gather all this data through the lens of Street Fighter II the animated movie. This abridged version, playing at a lower quality with a stylised bezel surrounding it, plays out pretty much as you'd expect until the final scene. In that final scene, as Bison casts off Ken's body and Ryu gives chase, this time it's not M. Bison who blocks Ryu's way, it's you, the monitor cyborg. It's quite cool to see this alternative anime footage. Some of it is clearly lower in quality than the original film, but still, it does fit in quite well. After that scene, the game transitions to a fighting game built on the Super Street Fighter II Turbo gameplay engine, and that is where your collected data kicks in. All of the data that you've gathered contributes to your android stats. The cyborg has Ken's moveset, and they will fight Ryu against the backdrop of the film's finale. Now, I thought I did pretty well on my first attempt, but my cyborg moved like a sloth and had attacks as weak as a kitten, making him easy pickings for Ryu. Depending on the fight's outcome, you will then get one of 3 endings. If Ryu beats you down over this one round confrontation, the game replays the final act of the movie. Ken returns to help Ryu defeat M. Bison in the iconic showdown that sees them blast the Shadowloo leader into his own craft, then continues all the way up to the final scene in the movie. If you beat Ryu, however, your cyborg towers over the defeated warrior and Bison takes you and his crew out to rule the world. The third ending has the cyborg relive all the scenes experienced by Ryu, including the flashbacks, which poses many questions, and in a strange Sonic anime Metal Sonic moment, kind of becomes Ryu, then proceeds to beat M. Bison to a pulp, and the last scenes play out with the cyborg acting out instead of Ryu. This ending is only possible if you get a perfect victory against Ryu in that final battle. Even though you can improve your cyborg stats by replaying the game, you can win and even perfect the Ryu battle with fairly middling attack levels. It just requires a lot of practice, and that would require you to load the game for that final battle over and over. However, annoyingly, you can only load from disc 1, which then prompts you to stick disc 2 in. If you want to keep reloading the fight, you have to put disc 1 in, then disc 2, which, as you can imagine, gets really annoying. Street Fighter 2 the movie has a bit more than just that main story though. There's a battle mode which lets you use your save data in a standard 2-round fight with Ryu, or you can use a code to put somebody else's cyborg build to the test. There's a versus mode which is just Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo if it had just one character and had to be played in a mirror match. Probably the best part of the package though is the development art for the animated movie, with storyboards, sketches and character profiles. There is a decent amount of bonus content here worth digging into. You may be wondering then, is this long forgotten Street Fighter game worth your time? The interactive part of this interactive movie is actually pretty lacking. The single round Street Fighter gameplay at the end feels kinda tacked on, and the bonuses are nice, but probably don't justify the cost of the game itself. However, I dare say that I had a lot more fun playing this than I expected, probably because I know the film so well. The physical version of this game does command a pretty penny, but it plays well on Saru and Fenrir even with the disc changes. Overall, Street Fighter 2 movie is a shallow yet entertaining FMV game experience. A decent curio for fans of the 1994 anime, though a strange waste of time for those that aren't. Still, it's an interesting footnote in the history of Street Fighter and Street Fighter 2, it being the last new Street Fighter 2 entry until the GBA's Super Turbo revival 5 years later. If you're a fan of the anime movie or the franchise, it may be worth checking out just so long as you keep your expectations in check. Let us know your thoughts on the game if you've played it yourself, but until next time, we will see you on the Sega side.